Good afternoon, members. We have apologies today from Stephen Moutry, Alex Atwood, and from Jimmy Spratt.
Yes.
Chris Little may be joining us, otherwise I think we have a full house. We'll get straight down to item 2 at page 5 of Chairman's Business. You'll find an invitation from the Committee for Education to their STEM in Action event. It's in the Long Gallery on Wednesday of next week, 1st of October. A list of participating schools is in your table packs at page 3. Could I ask members respond directly to the Committee for Education if they wish to attend. There's also an informal briefing with the Community Relations in Schools project, and that's been arranged for this Thursday. It's at 2 o'clock and it's upstairs in room 216. Can I ask at this stage any members intending to attend? Any parties intending to send?
I have a meeting at 2 and I'm in Belfast.
Even policy officers from parties?
Not sure.
Okay. Just before the summer, we received a request from the Belfast Islamic Centre. They want to brief the committee on issues facing the Muslim community here in Northern Ireland. So another informal briefing has been arranged, again Wednesday the 1st of October, again room 216. It's at 10 a.m. It would be good if parties could send somebody, MLA or policy officer, to that. Page 9 of your packs, you've got a copy of the committee's current invitations. Item 3 is the draft minutes of our meeting of the 17th of September 2014, beginning at page 11 in your packs. Are you content to agree?
Agree.
Thank you. Matters arising, can I refer you to page 18 of your packs? You'll see an updated list of the submissions received to date with regard to our inquiry into building a united community. Pause for comment. If not, members, we move on to the childcare payments bill. You'll recall last week we agreed to write to ministers to request a meeting about the bill. The junior ministers have agreed to meet us and we've set it for Monday, 29th September at 4:30. Could I suggest, rather than it just being the chair and the deputy chair, that we open it up to one representative from each of the parties on this committee? Yes. Okay. We don't have a venue for that meeting as yet.
Junior Minister Bell's office.
Junior Minister Bell's office on the ground floor. So that's 4:30 on Monday. And remember, we're due to finalise our report on the legislative consent motion with regard to the bill at our meeting next week. Do members wish to have departmental officials available next week in case we have any outstanding issues we want to raise? Yes, does no harm. Okay, thank you. And next at page 20 of your packs is the list of outstanding correspondence. In the absence of any comment at this stage, can I refer you to the correspondence summary sheet at page 23, which details correspondence received since our last meeting, and I'll ask the clerk now to highlight items that may require a decision, but you are of course all free to raise any correspondence you wish to deal with specifically.
Thanks, Chair. The first item I'd like to refer members to is at page 24 from the Committee for Finance and Personnel, just setting out outstanding post-project evaluations. There is one outstanding at the end of June for OFMDFM, and it's just to check if members wish to forward to the department for comment.
Yep.
Thank you. The next item I'd like to refer you to is at page 36 of the pack, from Patsy McGlone, Chair of the APG on Construction, which raises concerns about accuracy of information made through the ISNI portal, and asks what the department has taken to ensure it's accurately maintained. Just to check if members have any comments, are you content to forward it on? Okay. Yep. The next one is at page 38. It's the OFMDFM process for developing the childcare strategy, which outlines the process that the department is going to follow. And just to ask if members have any comments, or if you wish to ask for a briefing on the draft consultation document, and to reiterate the committee's view that it would wish that the strategy should address the issues faced by parents with childcare costs.
Okay.
And the final item I'd like to refer you to at this time is at page 40 of the pack, and it's a response to correspondence from the committee of the 19th of June regarding the HIA inquiry. And just to remind members that the committee also wrote on the 11th of September to request sight of the outcomes of the first scoping exercise and the terms of reference and timescales for the second, and that response is due back tomorrow. And just to check if you have any other comments at the minute. Okay, that's it. Thanks, Chair.
Kathy, thank you very much. Okay, members, our first substantive bit of business today is agenda item 6.
Chairman, could I just go back on matters arising? It's not down there, it's not pressing, but we discussed a wee bit of thing around last week, the Victims and Survivors Service.
Yeah.
I raised a particular case and was looking for officials at some point to address some of the concerns. I was just wondering if I'd be able to follow that up. And I hadn't written, but I actually thought there was a Hansard recording of that, but there actually isn't. No. I'd raised as a question about a particular family, and they're obviously dealing with means tested applications and all the rest of that, but there's a family of 12 siblings, and there was different responses that they were all getting from
the VSS.
different circumstances. Yeah, I raised it last week, that highlighted as part of the problem around victims, and I was asking for it to be addressed by the service or the department.
Right. Well, if members are content, would you be content with this approach that we have a chat right at the end of the meeting, get the details and write to the department?
I'll try and put it in the meeting, because I may not be here during the meeting. I want to apologise in advance, but I can forward them to...
Well, if Alex forwards it to the
Absolutely.
clerk, are you happy if we draft a letter on Alex's behalf to represent the family and ask for...
Okay.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, members, yes, a briefing from departmental officials is next. It's a response to phase 1 of the consultation on a sexual orientation strategy. That was launched on the 14th of March this year. It closed on June the 6th. The clerk's brief is at page 48 of your packs. Written updates from the department start at page 50, and a copy of the consultation document itself is at page 60. And we welcome to committee Janice Scallon, Patricia Carey and Margaret Rose. McNaughton back again, Margaret Rose. Just the once this week.
Thank you, yes.
Can I offer you up to 5 minutes for opening remarks?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for providing us with the opportunity to update the committee on phase 1 of the public consultation. I'll introduce Patricia Carey and Janice Scallon from our Statistics and Research branch. Committee members will know that the public consultation on phase 1 ended on the 6th of June, and the committee received an update on the development of the strategy on the 24th of June. Over the summer, the responses have been analysed, and the process will be completed in the very near future, at which stage the committee will receive a copy of the full analysis document. However, I want to share the main findings of the consultation with you. We received 995 responses. So this included 627 responses to the online questionnaire, 343 written responses from individuals, and 25 written responses from organisations. In general, the responses indicated a high level of agreement with the proposed vision for the strategy, and there was strong support for all 5 proposed emerging objectives, and a high level of agreement with each of the 2 proposed strategic aims. However, other issues that people felt should be covered in the strategy ranged from transgender issues, same-sex marriage, adoption rights and fertility treatment. A number of respondents wanted to see the language used in the strategy strengthened somewhat, and there was considerable support to developing a code for elected representatives, officials and public servants. There was a need, people thought, for an awareness-raising programme for all criminal justice agencies, focusing on the experience of violence, discrimination and hate crime amongst LGBT people. And people felt that all educational institutions should explicitly welcome all students and pupils regardless of their sexual orientation, and promote a learning environment in which all students can feel safe and respected. Other views expressed were that the strategy is unnecessary because provision already exists in legislation, and the fear that Christian values would not be protected. The consultation document itself recognised that several pieces of legislation have been introduced that address human rights, employment rights and equality. However, despite the protection afforded by the law, various areas have been identified where the LGBT population has faced inequalities, and the Equality Commission has highlighted instances where laws are not adhered to. in its response, the Equality Commission also recognised that LGBT people can suffer prejudice, intolerance and hatred in relation to their sexual orientation, which may manifest in ways that are outside the scope of legislation, such as various forms of bullying and harassment. So in terms of the way forward, following consideration of the analysis of the information gathered at Phase 1, Phase 2 can then begin. The development of the new strategy can raise awareness and give effect to current legislation. And in drafting the new strategy, we will highlight that the strategy can help give effect to existing legal protections to ensure that they're properly understood and enacted, and highlight that the strategy can address issues that are outside the scope of existing legal protections, such as promoting good relations and addressing homophobic bullying. When a draft strategy is developed and agreed, the committee will have an opportunity to comment on it before it's referred by ministers to the executive for final agreement and publication, with a view to conducting a further 12-week public consultation. We have committed to that at the beginning of the year. So we hope to begin the development of Phase 2 shortly, and the next meeting of the Sexual Orientation Project Group is set, I think, for the 28th of October. So thank you, Chair, and we're now happy to take any comments that you may have.
Okay, thank you very much. I think last week it was active ageing that we were discussing, and there was a feeling, I think, amongst the stakeholders that it was about as good as it gets in terms of a strategy. Is there any feedback in terms of how you ran this Phase 1?
Well, no, I think, generally people felt that what we were doing was trying to gather as much information as possible, so that would help us inform a strategy. So people knew that this was like a pre-consultation to the development of the full strategy, and then a further consultation exercise would take place. So, I mean, people, I think, were generally encouraged by the fact that something was being done, and there is a momentum out there now that a strategy will be developed.
Any surprises in the responses?
Well, no surprises. I mean, there were very different views, of course, and then that's to be expected, and we respect people's views, and we want to take account of those views and be sensitive to those views as well, and we will be doing that as we go forward.
And as you say, nearly 1,000 respondents, so it's an issue that does provoke reaction and strong reaction, obviously. Is there an urban-rural split that you can identify?
I'm referring here to Janice, who has prepared a lot of the quantitative analysis.
The consultation survey for the online consultation didn't ask people to identify their address, so we wouldn't be able to tag them to urban or rural to split those results.
What about by age bracket? Is there any discernible difference in attitude?
The differences at age levels tend, I'm going to public attitude now as opposed to responses to the consultation where there are no differences, but in terms of public attitudes towards LGB and T, attitudes have gotten much better over the years, but there does tend to be an age factor there. Analysis has shown, however, that it's difficult to know whether this is an age factor or whether it's a religion factor. And multi-level analysis, multivariate analysis would have to be carried out. This research has been done by Queen's and University of Ulster, and they've stated that further multi-level regression would be required to determine whether age is the factor towards attitudes or religion is the factor towards attitudes.
And that research is going to be undertaken, is it?
That research is already undertaken. Data are publicly available. It was undertaken in the Northern Ireland Life and Times survey. So the data are publicly available and have been since May.
Right, and sorry, I obviously missed this, but what does it conclude? That it is age or religion or both?
It doesn't conclude.
Doesn't?
It simply says both are a factor, but it's not sure how much one can predict the attitude
Right,
and the
so
levels.
you would need a further round
Yes.
to... Okay, now, just as you mentioned LGB and T, can we just put on the record why transgender is not a part of this, just for the record?
Yeah, well, when we spoke to transgender groups, they generally feel that their issues relate to gender rather than to either lesbian, gay or bisexual.
We've also established that under European law and legally, transgender is a gender issue. So sexual orientation is to do with somebody's sexual identity, whereas transgender is to do with their gender. So we are working on that basis, although in the consultation there was quite a significant number of people who commented on the fact that transgender issues should be part of this consultation. So part of the next phase, I think, will be around education and making it clear that it's not that transgender issues aren't being considered, it's that they're not being considered as part of a sexual orientation strategy, they'll be considered as part of a gender strategy.
Perfect, thank you very much. I think that explains that. Now, I think you said you got around 350 written responses from individuals basically opposed to the introduction of such a strategy, but didn't address the specific questions asked in the consultation.
Yeah.
So, what can you tell us about the nature of the responses and what they did address?
Well, I think the vast majority of those people were concerned that there may be some dilution of Christian values as a result of the introduction of any strategy, and we recognise that is the views of some people. People felt generally that the legislation that was in place at the moment was sufficient to provide the protections for LGBT people. And those were mainly the two main issues that they were coming up with.
That's, several hundred responses. Were they all, if I put it this way, original, or did you sense that there was perhaps a sense of a generic or a template that people were working off?
Well, there was 4 different variations of one template. There's a template with just 4 variations of it.
Okay.
And then there were a number of other letters that didn't follow one of the 4 templates, but raised a number of issues. So there were the 4 template type responses, and then a number of other letters that contain much the same in terms of the issues, but didn't follow the templates.
Is it possible to identify who or which organisation would be responsible for those templates?
But no, that wasn't included in the response. It was just a signature.
And you've made no attempt to try and trace it?
No.
They were all from individual people, and there were 25 written responses from organisations, and all of the 300 plus individual letters then on the template or the separate letters were from individuals. So we are treating them as letters from individuals.
Mm-hmm. But with an awareness that there is a coordinated effort across 4 different templates. So what do you do with that group of 300 plus? Do you engage with them during phase 2?
But yeah, I think we need to recognise, obviously, that these are their views. We will obviously be putting this forward to our own ministers first of all, and then working with the project team that we have established. We need to look at all of the issues that were raised and see how we can address the issues that some people have. It may be that we may need to engage with some of these, and you were very happy to engage with some of the people if we can, identify an organisation rather than with individuals, obviously. And certainly be very happy to do that and to, better, maybe give them a better understanding of what the strategy is about, that it's not about giving another section of the population more protection than others, but it's to try and create an equal society for everybody, where there is mutual understanding and trust and respect just. But it's not that one section will get more than the other.
Yeah.
Turning then to questions 25 to 32, and members in your packs, that's pages 70 to 79. There's specific themes that could be addressed that you're proposing, but in your summary of responses, there's no mention made of the themes. So what can you tell us about how those responding to the consultation reacted to the themes in 25 to 32?
Okay, if I can find the actual themes.
Yeah.
That's the actual question. Certainly, yes. This was in terms of raising awareness, homophobic violence, education, health, employment, and culture, arts, and leisure.
I think generally there was acceptance that we focused on the right themes, and there was general broad support of those themes. That was coming through from the quantitative analysis. In the individual responses, the 300 or so individuals who wrote separately, they didn't really deal with the themes as such, so it wasn't, and it won't be possible in analysing those to form a view. But in the overall consultation online, the 600 plus, there was very definite broad support that those were the appropriate themes to be looking at.
I mean, for example, the one which comes under 27, there's a suggestion of commissioning a new longitudinal research project to produce a detailed profile of the LGB community and social attitudes towards it. Now, we don't know how many people strongly agreed, who neither agreed nor disagreed, etc.
That's all part of the consultation analysis, which we're working through at the moment. But overall, the theme that received the most positive response was the homophobic violence, harassment and prejudice theme. But they all received in excess of 80% support for every single theme in the online consultation responses. So there's overwhelming support for every theme. In order to get into the individual responses on each component and proposed action under those themes, we need to do a lot of qualitative analysis of responses, which we're working on at the minute.
Yeah. I mean, one of the advocacy groups for the LGBT community here would argue that the UK government did research which suggests 6 to 10% of the UK population is LGB, and if that is the case for Northern Ireland, we're talking between 108 and 180,000 people.
That's right.
Is that chiming with your view?
But I think that's one of the issues that we face, that we do need to have robust data.
Yeah.
And because we haven't got the robust data, then it's difficult for us to make any kind of analysis of the numbers. I mean, some people would suggest there's maybe up to 10,000 people from the LGBT community, but I think that's one thing that any new strategy or the new strategy will want to be clear, that there is an outcome there that will provide robust data going forward.
I think it is, advocacy groups here would also say somewhere between 6 and 10%, and I think the issue is not just about in terms of knowing exact numbers, but then obviously gathering data about what the issues are. So if there's an issue, even knowing how many people are affected, there's obviously going to be an issue about how they're affected. So I think part of the next phase in looking at the data analysis and the requirement for data gathering will focus on that, and the fact that over 80% of people feel that that's an area that needs to be addressed in the online consultation element of the consultation shows that is a key element of would need to underpin any strategy.
The latest figures that we have in the Northern Ireland Life and Times survey, which is a general survey of the population, around 1,200 respondents, 1.3% identified as lesbian, gay or bisexual in that survey.
1.3.
So it's something that, as suggested by respondents to the online consultation, they've suggested either putting more questions into the Northern Ireland Life and Times survey, which we intend to do, not this year but next year, to explore the matter more fully.
A couple of specifics. I think there were two groups who had originally suggested that they would like to see a focus group style approach to this, and then they withdrew. Do you know why?
We had no explanation at all from them. I mean, I think there was one group, and I can't remember the actual name of the group. I think they may well have promoted conversion therapy in some sense, but they just sent an email in to say that they didn't want to have any. They just withdrew, I think, from the meeting that had been arranged.
Right. I suppose we'd all like to know why, in case they felt in any way that they couldn't.
Well, but certainly what we would like to do as we go through the second phase, and when a document is developed, an actual strategy document developed, certainly be very very happy to engage with them as well, and we will have details, and we'll have the name of the group. I can't remember the name of the group now.
I mean, the vision that you're proposing, obviously, is to promote an inclusive society that tolerates diversity, enables equality of opportunity for all lesbian, gay and bisexual people and their families, and recognises, protects and respects their human rights. Within that context, did you get any sense that people within the LGBT community feel vulnerable physically and or mentally through the lack of a strategy?
Well, I mean, certainly the information coming to us was that there are issues that people from the LGBT community face on a daily basis that suggest an intolerance. Some of the respondents, particularly from the organisations, the respondents were trying to be very supportive of the vision, but wanted the vision to be strengthened in some ways, so that rather than tolerate diversity, which some thought that actually meant that actually you were putting up with diversity. So some people wanted to strengthen that, to make that more of an maybe welcoming or promoting diversity, and certainly welcoming diversity as part of just the general society that we live within, and recognising that people, if we just tolerate them, that can make people feel in some ways vulnerable, that there is something that they just need to be put up with.
Yeah, I suppose that's the difference between a government that does something because they want to do it, because it's the right thing to do, and a government that does it because if they don't do it, they're in trouble.
Well, I mean, I think generally, I think the programme for government is clear as well, that we want to have a society that is diverse and is tolerant and inclusive. So I think it would be.
Last time we were discussing this, Margaret Rose, I think you said that the head of the civil service had written to departments at the end of March requesting the nomination of a senior policy lead to engage in the development of the strategy. And departments were also asked to identify outcome-focused actions which would help deliver any emerging objectives. Can you update us on where that is?
Well, that will form part of the development of the actual strategy now. Whenever we have, they were engaged as well, of course, during the pre-consultation or phase 1 consultation. And now whenever we go into developing phase 2, we will be taking the views of departments in terms of the actions that they already are taking, and some of them are actually doing some really good stuff, and other actions that departments feel that they can take now to better promote the diverse society that we have.
But just to be clear, has each department nominated a senior policy lead?
There's a senior policy lead from each department, yes.
Okay. And the rest, you think, will flow out?
Well, the rest will flow as we take through the development of the actual phase 2 of the strategy.
Okay. Members, I'll open it to yourselves. Otherwise, my last question is really just about the timeline from here on. Okay. Can you tell us about the timeline from here on, please?
Well, we hope to finalise the analysis document within the next few weeks. We have, as I said, another meeting with the project group set for the 28th of October, and we'd like to start then the development of phase 2. Taking it now, because we have so many and such a wide range of responses, that it's going to take a wee while to work through those and make sure that we reflect the views, properly in the new strategy. But certainly by the end of the year, we would hope to be finalising a document for further consultation.
So this is, yeah, Megan?
Just on that, I think the last time we were going to talk about this before the consultation, Martina Hanna said that there had been a drafting group set up to draft a strategy. Is that being established, or?
No, that's the project group, sorry, that I'm referring to.
The project board?
The project group that is meeting again 28th of October is the drafting group.
Okay, well, what role have the project board then have?
Well, it'll be, the project group will obviously report to the project board on progress.
Yeah.
And then they will then agree at each stage then what we can put forward.
Have the project board been given this analysis yet, or?
Not until this is, once this is finalised, we will have a full, the project board and the programme board, as it will go through the DSC programme board.
But there hasn't been any delays?
There hasn't been any, sorry.
Delays?
Well, in terms of, I suppose we had hoped that it wouldn't have taken so long to get the analysis document completed, so there's been a delay in that respect or in that regard, but we would hope that we can continue with the momentum now and get things moving once again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Janice, Patricia and Margaret Rose, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, our second oral briefing is again by departmental officials. This time it's the Executive's EU priorities for 2014-15. At page 86 of your packs is a briefing paper from the clerk, and then from 87 you'll find the initial consultation draft of the priorities for 14-15. The cover letter advises the document is still a work in progress and that thematic groups and the department will further refine their strategic EU priorities over the summer months. You may also recall one of the first debates in plenary in the new session was on our own report into our inquiry into the Barroso Task Force. One of the recommendations we came up with was that the Executive publishes its annual European priorities document in a more timely fashion, and certainly within the first quarter of the year in question. And I was about to welcome the officials, but apparently they're not here yet. So what can we go to? Members, if we go on to agenda item 9, a copy of the committee's draft end of session report for 2013-14 was put in your packs last week. You were asked to submit any amendments or proposals or comments over the course of the last week to the committee office. The report is back at page 104 of your packs, and it now includes the financial information for the year, which was missing last week. As far as I understand it, no comments or amendments were proposed to the committee office over the last 7 days. But at this stage, can I ask if any member does wish to propose an amendment? In the absence of which, can I ask are members content to sign off the end of session report, which would mean it would be published on our committee website?
Great.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I guess we could. We'll then go back to agenda item 8, members, which is the outcome of June monitoring. This is a written briefing at page 102 of your pack. Correspondence to the department requesting a written briefing on the outcome of June monitoring and the implications for the department and also for its arm's length bodies. A written briefing was received by the committee office at 20 minutes past 1 yesterday. It is therefore on tabled papers, page 5. When officials briefed the committee on the department's June monitoring bids, all the bids for extra funds were described as inescapable. But not all of them have come through the monitoring round process. Correspondence from the department before us today shows that bids in relation to the Victims and Survivors Service, the Hillsborough sites and race relations, including the Minority Ethnic Development Fund, have not been met. And the department advises that the Executive is committed to return to the funding issues facing victims' organisations in the next monitoring round. But the department is also facing a further 1.6 million or 2.3% reduction in resource budgets in October monitoring. And in fact, I just wonder whether the situation isn't even a bit more bleak than that, given some of today's speculation.
4% today, Chair.
Yeah, 4%. So you'll see that the October bid, I think, for the Victims and Survivors Services, correct me if I'm wrong, Clark, is 1.3 million. As I understand it, that would bring them up to their notional budget for the start of this financial year. They're sitting at 10, and from memory, the service said the commitments of 800,000 beyond that, valid bids from organisations of 350,000, so 1.3 would just about cover that. But it leaves the outstanding issue of the education scheme and the short break scheme are currently on hold through lack of funding. And that presumably would continue to be the case even if they were successful with their October bid.
Chair, I presume we'll probably discuss this in a bit more detail when we're receiving presentations on the issues, but it does seem extremely difficult to understand how an organisation delivering services to such a vulnerable section of our community had its budget reduced by 1.7 million in a year, and was then left with the challenge of where that reduction for the next half of the year actually comes from. As you've already said, you've mentioned some of the schemes that have been impacted, but the impact on the ground is you have people who last year were in receipt of funding towards physiotherapy for chronic pain management, and mid-year this year are told it's now no longer available. That's the impact of that budgetary reduction. So hopefully that 1.3 million is successful, but that's not going to change the fact that that type of person between June, July and October has had that impact on their day-to-day.
Well, I think we now, I think probably all accept that monitoring rounds have gone to a different level, and even though there's a reasonable amount of money available in monitoring rounds, the demands are now exponential, particularly from health. So we have a briefing, is it next week? We are scheduled.
For October monitoring?
October monitoring.
Yeah. Schedule.
I think that's going to be a very important session for us members. Right, I believe our officials are ready to join us to talk about the Executive's EU priorities. We welcome to the committee Dr. Jerry Mulligan and Dr. Paul Geddes.
Chairman, members.
Welcome back.
Chairman, firstly, can I start by apologising?
No, it's okay. The previous session was probably a little shorter than we anticipated.
Okay, well, certainly, I don't think I've ever got from the front door to here as quickly before.
Okay. Do you want to pour a glass of water and just get your breath?
Appreciate it.
Because if you're going to make opening remarks, we don't want you to be totally breathless. I have to say, I know what it's like from a previous life, being told to run into the studio and read out a piece of news. It's remarkable how quickly you lose the flow.
Well, I think we're ready now, Chair.
Okay, well, I'd invite you to take up the 5 minutes, Jerry, is it Paul or both?
Well, I'll begin, Chair.
Okay, well, give you both up to 5 minutes between you two to make your opening remarks.
Well, the Executive's draft priorities for 2014-15 were forwarded to the committee. I think it was the 1st of July. And these priorities are set in the context of both continuity and change across the European Union. Continuity in that the funding programmes and budgets have been set for 2014-2020. But important change in terms of the personalities that are taking responsibility for these programmes and the budget and the priorities that they're setting. And the most topical, of course, is at the moment is President Juncker, the President-elect, and his nominees for the College of Commissioners. Now, all of the designated commissioners will be important to us in Northern Ireland, but some I think more so than others, and I've a few that I would point to. Lord Hill, clearly, with his responsibility for financial services and the UK's designated commissioner. Phil Hogan, who is the nominee for Agriculture Commissioner. That's a very important post. Particularly given that our experience in the past has been one of not always having access to agriculture commissioners when it was important. So that we feel is important. Karina Crețu, Romanian lady who's taken responsibility for regional policy, and that covers structural funds, the peace programme, and importantly, currently the Barroso Task Force in the Commission. So again, another important one. Carlos Moedas, who is the Portuguese Commissioner designate for Research and Innovation, and clearly that's an important area for us going forward. And finally, Elżbieta Biankowska, a Polish lady who's taken responsibility for enterprise, including focusing on small and medium-sized enterprises and the social economy. So again, this is a particularly important responsibility and post for us to target. But priorities are also shifting, Chair, at a high level, President-elect Juncker has identified jobs and growth, with a particular emphasis on the digital single market and telecoms regulation, and you'll see that these will emerge in the months ahead as areas for particular attention. I know that President Designate Juncker is anxious to, for example, remove roaming charges, which would be welcomed by those people moving around the EU. He's another high-level priority he has identified as European Energy Union, particularly important in relation to security and diversity of supply, and the current crisis in Ukraine brings that into sharp focus. Trade negotiations with the United States is a third priority for President-designate Juncker, and the reform of monetary union to avoid the sorts of crises that we saw in recent years with the euro. And the fifth high-level priority area that is identified is, and this is, I think, important, delivering a fair deal for the United Kingdom. So those are the upfront priorities, if you like, from the President-elect. There is a specific priority, of course, Chair, for us that we would want to persuade Mr Juncker towards, and that is the continuation of the previously, or currently called the Barroso Task Force. And we have been lobbying at a political level and at official level to that end. Now, I would say at this stage, Chair, that the committee inquiry report recently published has been very useful to us. I have circulated it to key people within the European Commission, and it makes a very important point about the benefits and the real benefits of the Barroso Task Force and the response of the Northern Administration to that. So that will hopefully shape attitudes in Brussels towards the continuation of the task force. There are no guarantees, of course. Mr Juncker has indicated that he wants to do lots of things differently, but we will continue to lobby. The report itself, if I may just say something in passing, Chair, as well as being particularly useful, has made a number of recommendations. Now, we have formally commissioned a response from departments to the recommendations, and I know that the committee wants a reply by the 26th of October, which we will aim to meet. We have asked departments to come back to us by the 20th of September with our comments. Thereafter, we will distill these. We will put our suggestions to ministers, and then, subject to their agreement, we will have a reply to you, hopefully within your time scale.
Okay.
We can say something about some of the recommendations, in that ministers certainly have committed to continue with the interdepartmental group, particularly given the value identified in your report, and also to the earlier publication of executive priorities, and I know this was a point that was made within the report, and it's one that we will be giving particular emphasis to. Ministers have, at the last interdepartmental meeting, made a specific point of saying to departments that we needed to reduce the timescale on the production and publication of the executive priorities. So the existing priorities are, in that context, Chair, they continue to emphasise promoting our interests within the EU. They continue to emphasise raising our positive profile throughout Europe and raising awareness and encouraging participation in European matters. So I'm happy to take questions at this stage. I'm not sure if Paul wants to add anything to that.
Nothing to add at this point, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I mean, I think the context is important, and it's welcome to hear your thoughts on that, and also your support for the committee's report, and we look forward to the responses. But The session is on the executive's EU priorities. I want to be clear about that. Last year, the committee wasn't briefed on the 13-14 priorities until October. Here we are in late September. The priorities have not yet been published. This document we have talks about developing relationships with stakeholders, but the stakeholders haven't had sight, presumably, of the EU priorities of the executive in a timely fashion this year either.
That's why, Chair, as I said, we will be pressing departments to ensure, if you like, the concertining of the timescale into a much shorter period, and we would aim to have the next year's executive priorities to you in a more timely fashion. Paul, could I?
Okay, but just say what went wrong? Can we not agree that last year it was late?
Yes.
Surely at that point, you collectively, not you individually, but collectively, there is a recognition. This is too late. This isn't best practice. We need to fix it for next year, and yet it hasn't. All you're saying is we're going to fix it for next year.
Sure. It is important that we consult with the committee as early as possible in the process so that we can take account of the committee's views. The departments, the process starts towards the end of the year and is triggered by the publication of the Commission's work plan and its priorities for the coming year. That starts the process off. This year we did adopt a very different methodology in that the priorities were grouped in a way that they haven't been previously, and that was to try and give a greater coherence and a greater logic and rationale to the way in which the priorities were being structured. In a sense, because it was the first year, we had to manage that change of approach, and departments had to manage it as well. That said, departments were working from an early stage to their own draft objectives, so they were working even in advance of us agreeing the final text with departments, the final draft text. They were working to what they had established as their European objectives. So you will see that some of the actions that you will be reported on later in the year will reflect activities earlier in this year. So it's not to say that departments are waiting for the agreement on the objectives before they then take forward the actions.
But what about the broader stakeholder group? I mean, are they not to a certain extent in the dark about what's going on until this document is in the public domain?
Well, again, we will be in touch with stakeholders through our ongoing interactions through fora such as the Northern Ireland Economic European Forum, which is co-chaired by the department and by Belfast City Council. So there would be a sensitivity to emerging priorities through that particular forum, and those would be reflected. Of course, departments themselves, in formulating their own priorities, will be in touch with their own stakeholder groups through their arm's length bodies, through their NGOs, and that process would reflect departments' departments' own engagement. So at a OFM-DFM level, certainly we are sensitive to the points of view emerging through the multi-sectoral forum that we have, and departments likewise.
I suppose the logic of that is that departments and their own stakeholders just get on with it, and that works, and that's great. And the only failure is the coordinating duty of OFM-DFM, and it's neither here nor there. Departments and their stakeholders are getting on with business.
The departments will clearly need to get on with business, and in that sense will need to have a clear idea of what their objectives are for the coming year. But equally, things will change as new priorities emerge, and I mentioned some of the priorities that are emerging with an incoming Commission. So we will need to look at those carefully to see to what extent the priorities that we agree at the end of the day emerge and resonate with those.
But again, I think that the logic of it seems to me is departments and stakeholders getting on with business. If OFM-DFM's role is more of a coordinating one and they can't do it in a timely manner, in these austere times, why ask the taxpayer to fund that service?
Well, the executive priorities are at the end of the day more than the sum of the parts, it is a.
In what way?
In that it is a strategic overview of where the actions and priorities within departments fit an overall executive framework, and the framework that doesn't change significantly from year to year is one of placing priority on the need to influence policy in a direction that is in our interest, to draw down money in a way that maximises the financial benefits, and to raise our profile both by networking and by showcasing what we do to the rest of Europe. Now, those are priorities which tend not to change from year to year. It's the specifics the departments do then that vary from year to year. And in that sense, we add value by agreeing what those high-level priorities are.
Okay. In terms of that kind of strategic reshaping, if I can use that phrase, I think that's what you're suggesting. It'd be really useful to have an example of where that actually happened, and you reshaped an individual departmental priority.
Well, again, and without preempting the detail, I mean, we are aware with the incoming College of Commissioners a particularly strong emphasis on issues to do with the social economy and issues to do with small and medium-sized enterprises. So I would expect that would be reflected also in the way in which those areas and those sectors are prioritised in the detail of what emerges.
Can you give us a previous example, an actual example of this is where we did move in and reshape a departmental priority?
Well, again, a very obvious example that comes to mind is the priority given to maintaining a structured relationship with the Commission. This has now become a priority, given that we are moving towards the end of the mandate of the current President. So that has, while it may not have been in previous priorities, it certainly has emerged in the course of the course of the past few months.
But you can't give me an example where you would have gone to the department and said, I see you're thinking of doing this, applying for this funding or whatever. Strategically, you'd be better doing it another way.
Well, we do make suggestions to departments about the ways in which they can best showcase the work that they're doing, and departments will often take on board our suggestions for the sorts of policy work that they're doing. So we could again, I don't want to preempt any decisions departments take, but we could see areas of work in the transport sector or in the energy sector or in aviation that are particularly reflective of the progressive policies that are pursued by the relevant department.
I got in my mind there, Jerry, from what you said previously, that you'd be able to give us examples and say, you know, like last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, a certain department was going to do something, and we said, no, the better way to do it is this. This is our input.
Well, we certainly would reinforce departments by giving more emphasis to certain areas. I'm not sure that we have ever suggested to departments that they shouldn't be putting in a particular priority, because at the end of the day, that's a decision for them. We don't have a policing role as such. It is closer to what you said, Chair, as being a coordinating role. But we certainly do make suggestions, and departments would often act on those suggestions, introducing areas that they may not have thought as a priority before, and giving greater emphasis to others.
Leslie Cree.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly did enjoy the Yes Minister series, you know, and certainly I think you certainly following in a very well-known and much appreciated line there. I followed all your words there, and just the net sum at the end of the day was I didn't have an example.
Well,
We'll try you on another line now because we've done that bit. One of the priorities you mentioned here is with respect to people and organisation, and you talk about ensuring that the policy staff have the knowledge and skills to maximise their effectiveness. What does that actually mean?
Well, engaging European policy is a specialised area. Understanding programmes and how to go about applying for programmes is a specialised area. To work effectively in that area, you have to know something about the way in which the European institutions work. So we place a great deal of emphasis on training of staff and having available to them courses that they can go on, opportunities for them to work in Europe, and all of which would contribute towards building up a cadre of civil servants who would be very much at home working in the European area. Some of it would therefore be encouraging people to take up posts in secondment posts in Brussels, in my office, or in some of the other institutions. Some of it will be done locally, delivering courses for people here on European policy, European legislation, so that people understand what it is that Europe is about. Without that, we won't be able to see the implications of European legislation. We may even miss a trick when it comes to seeing opportunities to influence policy. And the other risk, of course, is that we may not be compliant with the rules and legislation that are set in Europe. So all of which suggests the need for people to be well up to speed on European matters, and we do that through a combination of both giving people opportunities and through formal training.
I was in Brussels some time ago with the Assembly and Business Trust. I made mention, Chair, of this in the discussion on the Barroso Force in the House, and we were well advised by lots of people there, one of them particularly from the Republic of Ireland, and he said it's absolutely crucial, it's his opinion here, that you get involved when the straws are even in the wind, or even before that. Because whenever a paper is produced, it's virtually too late. Very few papers are changed. So when we went to our own people, we were dismayed we asked them a similar question. We were dismayed to learn that they said, well, we wait until the paper comes out and then we start to discuss it. Has that improved?
Well, my experience on this is that we have influenced policy and legislation proactively based on very good intelligence about the direction of travel of that policy and legislation. And an example of that is on the transport side, where the funding of roads, which is currently permitted within the regulations, might not have come about in that we...
Yes, I'm aware of that one.
And that is an example. The other example that I would draw to your attention is in the securing of a peace programme. I mean, we knew there was an issue about timing, and that if we didn't register an interest at a particular point in time, that it might not have come about. So,
we have learned, is that what you're saying?
I think we have learned, and I think departments, from my experience, are getting in at a very early stage in policy development.
I'm encouraged by that. And another quick question, Chair. The European Investment Bank, we don't really use loans from that bank. Is there any reason why not?
Well, under current Treasury rules, departments can't borrow from the European Investment Bank. The other, whereas local government can, and indeed there are examples of European Investment Bank funding significant projects. An example comes to mind of the University of Ulster's campus, which has a significant element from the investment bank.
Sorry, that was financial transaction capital, was it not?
The investment bank, I understood, were party to that loan.
The FTT.
The other, sorry,
I help you out there. The capital deals affected by EIB banking, but We don't know whether
sorry,
interest is cheaper or more expensive.
Yeah. The point is that capital funding from the block is less expensive than would be under the European Investment Bank, which does.
Are you sure about that now? Because I have asked that question and I've never got an answer from anyone until this afternoon.
Well, based on advice I've received from colleagues in the Department of Finance, I would suggest that the block as a source of capital funding is much cheaper than an interest-based loan from the European Investment Bank.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Can I ask about the balanced scorecard? How are departments reconciling themselves to that? Do they like that approach?
Yes, it's been generally accepted as a better way of organising priorities. The logic of the scorecard is that, first of all, there's an immediate focus on results, what departments aim to achieve, and the way in which those results are brought about, the processes that we need to bring about, the stakeholders that we need to involve, and the people that we need to develop. That's the simple logic of it as a business planning tool. It is a tool, Chair, that is used, I think, more or less universally for departmental business planning. So the other advantage is that it links in directly with department's business planning method as well.
Mm-hmm. I'll come back to that in a second, Jerry, if you don't mind. Can we go on to the competitive drawdown, which is obviously vital? We should be maximising the drawdown. Of course, that goes without saying. I think everybody now accepts, perhaps, that the initial targets in this PFG were a little under-ambitious, but that's great if we're drawing down. The figures for 13-14, are they available for year 3?
Chair, I will ask Paul, who is in command of the detail here, to maybe comment on this point.
No, they're not currently, Chairman. The figures for the year 3, the 13-14 year, are currently being validated. There is an issue with the Erasmus Plus programme at the European level, and the statistics there cannot be finalised. This affects all member states, and the Department of Education has been pursuing the figure through the British Council in the UK, who interface with the Commission services. So unfortunately we have a situation where one funding programme, one of the new funding programmes, has not been able to get its statistics right at the European level, and that has delayed the validation of the year 3 figures. I'm aware that the committee would like a year 3 breakdown, but that's the reason why we have not yet provided it, because we cannot assure the top line figure. We have pursued this relentlessly over quite a few months. I have spoken to the British Council. In fact, I'm a member of the group in Northern Ireland that's looking at the Erasmus Plus programme, and it is a common problem. So at this point, we're currently blocked on that. Okay. So the figures have not been released to anybody at this stage.
Okay. You clearly will have seen the other figures. Discounting Erasmus Plus, should the executive be pleased?
I'm not clear what you're referring to when you say we're discounting Erasmus Plus.
If you leave that to one side for one moment, you've seen the other figures then?
No, I haven't. Which figures are you referring to?
Drawdown figures.
Oh yes, sorry. Yes, if we take the Erasmus Plus programme out of the year 3 values, yes.
And scan the rest?
Yes.
Successful?
Yes, we are successful, yes. So when the year 2 values were released, ministers had made the statement that we were well on target to meet the 20% value. That still holds, and we're extremely confident about that.
Excellent. Okay. Coming towards the end, gentlemen, and I would like to go back to where we began, which is really on timeliness. In our inquiry, we got very firm statements from other Assembly committees with regard to being dissatisfied about the flow of information, including the timeliness of information on EU policy and funding matters. Now, clearly, for committees to fulfil their statutory role of advising departments, that is a major issue. And particularly at this time, where our budget is in its final months, where we need a budget for 15-16, where there will have to be a decision made about a programme for government to take us through to the end of the mandate. So there's the issue of timeliness of informing committees, but even, I would suggest, more importantly, there's a quote from your document saying departments seamlessly integrating European policy at local, regional, national and supranational levels is a measure of success. So given we are, as an executive, going into these negotiations about budget and programme for government to see us through to the end of the mandate, what can you tell us to assure us that you are inputting in a timely manner in terms of EU priorities?
Well, we take entirely the point, Jerry, you make about the need for timely information to be made available to committees and indeed to stakeholders. To that end, we have been looking at our communications, and we were taking steps to integrate a lot of the information that we would put out selectively into a single source. We're working on that at the moment. We would confidently expect to be able to launch what would be an integrated database covering a lot of the information that would influence and help and assist all those stakeholders that participate in European engagement. This is something that I'm confident we'll be able to report on very positively the next time you'll be hearing a briefing on European matters, and this has been given a priority. It's one of the recommendations in your report, Chair, which I can report on positively. We're taking steps to integrate information from a variety of sources into a single accessible database, and that should improve things in terms of timeliness of information.
We were hearing earlier in the week in the Chamber that the Finance Minister is now focusing in on the 15-16 budget. What sort of liaison are you having with him?
Well, we have liaison through the interdepartmental group. The Department of Finance have a senior official on that group. So that is an opportunity for us to take on board DFP's perspective on the certainly on the financial aspect of European engagement. So we have close and continued contact and conversation with DFP. I have a meeting with the senior DFP official tomorrow, indeed, to talk about some of this.
So finally, when will we see the priorities document? When do we see the implementation report for 13-14?
Okay. What would you like to cover the things?
Yes, well, what we're actually doing, Chairman, on this is we are now attempting to eclipse some of the time that's been lost. So departments are working simultaneously, not only on concluding the 14-15 priorities, but also preparing the implementation report for the first period of this financial year. Following the interdepartmental meeting which junior ministers chaired and the revised timeline that was agreed at that meeting, we hope that the executive will move to agree both the documents sometime in October, and they would be released thereafter.
Okay.
If there is agreement at executive level.
Members content?
Yep.
Paul and Jerry?
Okay, and again, apologies for the
Understood.
Thank you, Chairman, members.
Members, can I draw your attention to page 115 of your packs, where you'll find correspondence from Patrick Yu of the Northern Ireland Council for Ethnic Minorities. This includes the organisation's response to the consultation document on the racial equality strategy. NICEM are asking for a formal meeting with the committee regarding the consultation on the racial equality strategy. The Department's consultation on that strategy is scheduled to end on the 10th of October, and we will clearly be seeking a briefing as soon as possible thereafter. Are you content to wait until we have had our briefing on the consultation and then invite NICEM in to brief?
Yep.
I think it's sensible, Chair. That's the only way you can do it.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's exactly what Patrick you wants, but if we are content, that's what we will propose at this stage. Okay. Finally, members, the draft forward work programme, page 159. OFM, DFM have requested that the briefing on the child poverty strategy is moved from the 1st to the 15th of October. Are we content with the proposed forward work programme?
Yep.
Any other business, members? If not, can I remind you, Junior Minister Bell's office at 4:30 on Monday to talk about the childcare payments. Bill 1, representative per party. Can we let Mr. Atwood know?
Yes,
Over that, please. Next formal meeting of the committee is Wednesday, the 1st of October, here in room 30 at 2 p.m. The meeting is adjourned.
Well done.
Assembly Committee Room 30.